Welcome back again, everyone, to the Word Traction Network. And our podcast today is hitting on 2 points of interest for me today, which is what our wonderful friends in Ukraine are doing to affect Russia's ability to move around weapons and the parts that go into the logistical systems that go into making the weapons, and also some monetary policy. Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, doing some pretty shady shit. First of all, wild berries in Russia, which is their Amazon equivalent, and Ukraine has been very successful at attacking the logistic hubs for this very large entity in Russia. And they move around dual use technology parts and otherwise for the Russian military. So it's a legitimate target from a UN sense, from a rules of war and combat sense. And I couldn't help but thinking about the delightful equivalents to our Amazon, because Wildberries is somebody that is a close friend of Vladimir Putin's, just as DJ Jazzy Jeff Bezos is a supplicant of Donald J. Trump. Why? A man with almost limitless resources. Why he should bow down? I mean, I know it's about money, it's about power, but it's still a fucking embarrassment. But the they're going so far as to remove the branding from the side of the delivery trucks for wild berries across Russia because they've become a target. And Mr. Zelensky, our dear friend and ally, is taking strays from all sides. He has uh, former military leaders calling for early elections during a war, and he is axing more senior officers in his government. I would presume in an effort to maintain control, because what he doesn't need, I mean, it's a democracy, but what he doesn't need is to be distracted unnecessarily while he's trying to prosecute a war. That's a delicate balance, and in a real democracy like we used to have here, that would be a concern as well. But each time the Wildberry delivery truck takes a little bit of shrapnel, not minimizing the impact to human life, it makes me think about Jazzy Jeff's Amazon trucks, and if it should be determined by some adversary, China, otherwise, that determines that Amazon is assisting the U.S. in their war effort, then even the trucks that are super quiet now. I was having a nice conversation with an Amazon truck driver recently, and it was I think it was about 100 degrees out in northern Massachusetts, and that's pretty hot for around these parts. And I was asking, you know, I remembered talking to UPS drivers, 40 plus years ago, working in downtown Boston, no AC, in a dark truck that just absorbs heat. It's, driving around a furnace. And this driver, young, cool kid, he's like, no, man, these are great. They're all electric. So they're so quiet. Old guys that don't see so well have to be very quiet because those trucks come up upon you very quickly. And he said, "No, look at the seats here. There are vents built into the seats, so the AC, sort of surrounds the driver, and it's pretty cool. I just wish he'd spend a little bit less on that and not fire as many workers, but that's just me. And of course, it's about shareholder value for these guys, and they can collectively go and fuck themselves, and Jeff can be first in line. Um, Scott Bessent, Secretary of the Treasury. The game is afoot. And what are the things, what are the market manipulations that the Federal Reserve can do without the cooperation of the Fed? Because it seems Kevin Warsh, the new chair of the Federal Reserve Bank, is kind of playing it straight down the middle, and he's making all the right noises, as are the presidents of the various Fed banks, about, in fact, the need to raise interest rates rather than to reduce them. Now, will he have a Trump MAGA pizza delivery epiphany some night coming up? Kevin Warsh is is well protected in his position. He comes from an enormously wealthy family. That's the Estee Lauder fortune, his wife, so they can be well protected. But he's going to. Trump has been so measured in his criticism of the Fed, it makes me suspicious. But our friend Scott Bessent can do quite a bit by himself, and he's already begun doing so. You might have noticed if you follow such markets that Bitcoin is back above 70,000. Right? It's fairly remarkable. And what Bessent announced is that they're going to increase their buyback, kind of on the long end of the yield curve. So in those 10 to 20, 20 to 30 range, as opposed to the twos and fives, they're going to do more and more meaning double, like 20 billion and now 40 billion, telegraphing it. The buybacks will occur in September, which is, conveniently 6 weeks ahead of the election. And what he can achieve by doing that is he can potentially, you get flutter in Bitcoin, which used to be thought of as a sort of a risk asset, but it's behaving differently now, particularly when Trump had all of the crypto guys into the White House yesterday or the day before and told him exactly how he was going to help them make a lot of money at the expense of the smaller investors, just like Trump did with his coin and his meme coin and his Melania coin and all that. How everybody at the White House made a lot of money, and all of the Trump red-hatted sycophants out in the countryside got fucking screwed. But that's the way that life goes. And he's a stealing with both hands, 16-time convicted felon, etc. So what do you expect? So what Bessent announced and will do on the buyback side will it's a sugar high, and it's a sugar high strategically timed to bloom in the economy right before the election. So Trump can say, "Hey, have you seen the Dow? Hey, have you seen the Nasdaq? Hey, the interest rate on your 30-year mortgage is down X percent." I mean, he'll make up any number he wants because that's what he does, and just tell any kind of story. But in very real terms, if in a short term manner, he can affect that kind of. It's the very same behavior that Bessent has criticized. He criticized it in the Biden administration, but the scale is, if it's a comparison at all, was pennies to dollars, and so it's a big, when you go 2x on the buybacks, it's going to have a substantial effect, and he'll do that, and then he'll massage the market by suggesting that he's likely to do it again, and he won't even have to, but just signaling that that buyback, he might take another 20, 30, $40 billion bite in, in he'll say, in October, and that will be enough to massage the markets. And Trump could have at midterms the indices. Of course, we always remind ourselves that the equity market is not the economy. But as far as a shiny toy to talk about going into the election, and to be quite honest, Republican politicians want an excuse to support Trump, even with ICE killings, ICE murders. Will Trump take the foot off the gas in September for a short term period to say that, there hasn't been there are people dying in ICE custody every day, it seems, in the detention facilities. But could he take the foot? I expect them to pull out every possible rabbit out of every hat that can be found to manipulate things coming in. Now, this has been going on, time immemorial, trying to paint a rosy picture right ahead of the elections, and effective, never more effective than it is now, because our collective attention spans are about zero. So, or 0 to 15 minutes. Donald Trump, his strategies are generally work in 15-minute increments. That we always contrast that to China that does their planning in decades at a time, out to a century. They are very long-term approach and very disciplined, and therefore you have predictability, which is what business is screaming for, yearning for here in the United States. In the Trump world, the volatility that you get, if you want to look for a positive, then it's great for day traders. You know, the oil market, the selling proprietary information to people on Truth Social for $100,000 a month subscription, so you can be the best day trader ever, because you're getting it straight from the horse's mouth ahead of everyone else. But and you know that Trump is gonna front run all of his subscribers on that, because he gets to eat first. That's what selfish people do. You know, we won't go back to the seven deadly sins from yesterday. It's gluttony and it's avarice. It's which is you fat bastard, and unending greed. That's what he's all about. And so these moves by Bessent, as I mentioned, they're telegraphed in such a way to ease the market in and out. And if there's any risk of any, and they're financing it with more short-term instruments, so they're making sure that any volatility won't cause any major spikes until after the election, and then they don't give a fuck. You know, your mortgage rates snap back right after the election or towards the end of the year, because those manipulations, cotton candy, sugar high, only last so long, right? It's well, put it in Washington D.C. terms, it's cocaine, and that 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 high is short lived or very expensive, usually both, and that's Donald Trump's White House, Donald Trump's administration. And what can I do to feel good right now? Afternoon, Natalie. And what can I do to fill my family's coffers to overflowing, and then get the fuck out of Dodge? Right? So, yeah, so that's, let's, tip of the hat to our dear friends in Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky, who is, imagine fighting the kind of war that he's had to fight. Remember, he was the head of a comedy troupe, right? Donald Trump was something, he was a game show host. So there are some similarities there, but except that Zelensky is a man in full, and Trump is a grievance filled, declining asset of Russian state security. So they're a little bit different. But we love our Ukrainian friends and allies, and even though, like I said, we don't minimize the a driver of a delivery vehicle for wild berries in greater Moscow comes under attack. That's regrettable, but people at Wildberries are aware of the fact that they're being used to move around dual use technology. Much of it recently arrived from China, who is resupplying uh, uh, Vladimir Putin on the regular. And both of them are helping their friends in Iran to be more effective killers of American soldiers. Trump is holding off. He's saying that, you know what I'm going to do? I've got all the missiles I need, but I'm not going to use them. And instead, I'm going to put economic pressure on the Iranians. Been doing it all along. How's it working out for you? But I'm going to focus on that. That's also perhaps a ploy to have no more casualties between now and the election, and then they can double down and go on, November 10th or whatever. Once it's after the election, but then after all the ballots are counted, which is not always the same thing. So that's um, that's your U.S. Treasury Department. That's your Scott Bessent, the soybean farmer from Carolina. That is our dear hero, Volodymyr Zelensky, and all the other bit players that are running around in the back. And I'll wish you all a beautiful day. Hope you stay on the right side of the angels, and I'll be back with you sometime tomorrow. Thank you very much. Kindly restack, retweet. That's still a thing. Share on another platform. Subscribe if you haven't. It's free. And if you can inspire some of your friends, frenemies, um mistresses, male mister, uh, fuck boys, well, whoever, people in your circle, if you can inspire them to subscribe as well, that would be greatly appreciated. And have a beautiful day. And thank you very much for your time.